Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Art Tells a Story. Let it tell yours. My name is Matt Swi. I'm a local filmmaker, media artist, educator, and co-founder of the Columbus Moving Image Art Review, the longest-running free-to-attend and free-to-submit showcase of films in Central Ohio and surrounding areas. I want to thank really quick Jim and Michael Reese, the Reese Brothers, for their constant support of artists, both like locally, domestically, and internationally. Like everything they do, they're involved in so many projects, and they help support this broadcast. Also, thanks goes out to Nikki Swift, Nicolette Cinematographics, for putting on this weekly broadcast. It's been going on for quite some time now. We're looking at three months that this thing's going on to support local artists and have a chance to have conversations with artists. So today I'm going to be hosting a talk with a longtime colleague and friend of mine that's a local moving image artist, filmmaker, video artist here in Columbus, Ohio, Eric Homan. Eric Homan is an assistant professor at the Columbus College of Art and Design in downtown Columbus, Ohio. He earned his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in time-based media studies from CCD in 1998, and then received his Master of Fine Arts in computer arts at Florida Atlantic University in 2000. Eric employs his creative skills of using video, animation, photography, and digital technology as a means of communication, creativity, and self-expression. So welcome, everybody, and we're going to have a conversation with Eric. How you doing today, Eric?
Oh, pretty good. Thank you for inviting me, Matt.
Cool. It's great to have you. So I wanted to start off the first question here with a little bit of a surprise question for you. So, I run the Columbus Moving Image Art Review, and you've been participating in there for a pretty long time. And I think I told you this a few months ago that you, besides myself maybe, because I show work regularly, you are the most prolific participant in our 10 years worth of quarterly screenings. We're about to have the 44th screening, and you participated in more than any other filmmaker. I'm wondering, do you remember when and what film you showed the very first time that you showed with Columbus Moving Image Art Review?
Luckily for me, I looked it up on my computer.
Oh, that's cheating.
Oh, you can't see what I'm looking up right now. You have no idea. Let's see. Hold on.
Well, I know it's been quite a while.
It's Life Lapses 2013, number 3.
Yeah, so that's March 22nd of 2013. We call it CMAR is the acronym for people tuning in. CMIAR, Columbus Moving Image Art Review. That's CMAR number 14. So you have participated in 27. You have shown more than 27 films, because sometimes you've shown more than once, but you've participated in 27 out of 44 or 43 Columbus Moving Image Art Reviews here locally. So over half.
Yeah, and this brings up the importance of the event that you have been hosting and been generous enough to have this going on in Central Ohio, is that you have an avenue for us type of filmmakers that are video artists that don't necessarily have a lot of places to show at. And this is like one of the best places that we can meet other filmmakers, mingle, show your work on a big screen. And it doesn't matter if it's animation or documentary or video art, as long as it's a moving image. And I love the way you talk about that. It's like, it can be a photograph, but as long as it's a little bit of movement happening in there and it involves time, that's what you're looking for. And that kind of openness and generosity has always been very much appreciated. So I've been saying, hey man, this is exactly what I've been looking for. Nice plug for your for Columbus Moving Image Art Review, and just to say thank you for that as well, because it's been helpful for me, and it's been nice to get the work out there. And it motivates you too to do more work. It says, hey, there's an avenue for this. So it's been very beneficial too. I mean, I don't think I would have met you either without that event. So, and as well as Nikki Swift. So Thank you for both of you.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I mean, and what you're saying right there are things that we say regularly. It's one of the reasons we made the event in the first place, and we do it 4 times a year, is because, you know, we wanted to have a place to motivate people. As a video artist in a town like this, once you get out of school, where a professor is constantly asking you to make something to show in class, like, you could make things, but where you got to show them? And so that drive to show them slowly fades a little bit. And so then you're like, well, you know, I have other things to do. I don't really have time to make another piece. I'm not going to show anybody anyways. And you, as an artist, like the hardest thing for any artist to do is get to the studio, walk down the hall, pick up the brush, and paint a painting. Like, that's the hardest thing to do. Once you're in the studio and you got the brush and you got the paint, you know, yeah, painting is hard, but actually just getting the motivation to go and start is very difficult. And anything we can do to help people who are making film, documentary, animation, video art, any of that stuff, is, you know, anything we can do to help them is what we want to do. So we've shared a lot of experiences, a handful of experiences over the years because of that. But, you know, we don't often get to talk about each other. Like, you know, we're always talking about film or about what's going on with school or other kinds of stuff. And so I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about, you know, how did you get started doing this? I mean, you were at CCAD in time-based media studies, and then you went on to Florida. Like, you know, what really got you started making this work?
Yeah, so the crazy thing is that I did not have any time-based background when I started at Columbus College of Art and Design. I tell my students that because I'm meeting a new group of freshmen. We're in week 3 now, the new semester of online teaching with some of them, and some of them are kind of freaked out because they have never had any type of art experience, and they're next to other people that have had a lot. So you're trying to tell them to be patient. But I did have a passion for movies. I read movie guides and magazines and different types of film books, just learning as much as I could about what was good cinema out there and reading film criticism. And then you start taking those video classes, and I started taking animation and video at the same time, as well as interactive art, as well as computer animation. And that's when the major at CCAD was called Time-Based Media Studies. And that is now split off into 3 different majors now, which is film and video, animation, and game design. So that's like become 3 different major areas. But I just was always intrigued by film and animation. Those were major draws for me. And I just kept following it. And, you know, the more classes you take, the more projects you start developing, you get around more like-minded creative people. And there's no greater joy than making art. And again, that's where the Columbus Moving Image Art Review is a good thing, because you get to be around other people that share that interest and that drive. And then when I graduated CCAD, I realized I was very creative or more experimental minded. And I decided that, you know, the only way for me to keep doing what I'm doing is becoming a teacher. And I knew I needed to get a graduate degree. So that's what led me to the Florida Center for Electronic Communication in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It was headed by the poet laureate of Florida at the time, Edmund Skellings, and he was known as the Electric Poet in the 1960s. He was one of the first people that combined 3D animation with poetry. And one of the things that he pushed us to do that you'll appreciate is that he wanted all the students to, you know, write their own poetry as well as record their own voiceover to the work. So I was really excited by 3D animation, mainly because of a film called Tron, the Disney film from 1982, because it dealt with this new dimension of this 3-dimensional world inside of a video game. And to me, I was like, I like the idea of 3D modeling in regards to a 3D, of making a 3D painting. Like, what would a painting look like if it was 3-dimensional with that same concept of Tron, where it was like this weird 3-dimensional world that you can actually move through. So that's some of the things that and then I wanted to make a story inside of that space as well. And that's some of the projects that I made when I was a graduate student. And then I got into teaching, I became a graduate assistant, got hired on, luckily, as an assistant professor, and then found out about a teaching job here at CCAD, a full-time teaching job there in 2002, and I've been teaching there for 18 years now.
That's huge. That helps leads me into kind of the next question. You talk about all the different ways that CCD has like broke their degree, their education is split up into some different tracks now, but you've come through these different areas. And I mean, it makes sense why we have so much in common in a way, and like we can really jive off each other's works a little bit. Because like as you said, I have a reel behind me and I have it on mute because we're on a call, but I wanted to have some art up. And you know, how do you do? I could either do a 3D background, like a green screen background, or have a TV here. And but these are all spoken word pieces, like you're talking about. They're all, I wrote some kind of poetry or something to go with them, and then there's a poetry of my own voice over top of these images. But you know, I was trained on a lot of the same stuff in a way. A lot of stuff coming out of like San Francisco and other places in the 60s, 50s, 60s. Where they were taking the huge like kind of beatnik and poetry culture mixed with experimental film culture, and the next thing you know, you have these people just jiving off of each other, and then the next thing you have transcendental film and animation, people doing stuff on early computer animation stuff where they're doing mandalas and all kinds of geometric patterns and stuff. So you know, we come from a lot of the same backgrounds there. But I do know that you work in a few different kinds of medium. And so you also do some stuff in a documentary realm. Can you talk a little bit about how, you know, you got started doing a little bit more documentary work?
Yeah, that was, I didn't really have any, I was always videotaping. That's something that people always thought was kind of stereotypical about me, because I'm always taking pictures. And that's just because of that rabid curiosity. If something attracts my eye, I just got to capture that moment. And that was based on my experiences as a photography student or taking photography classes at CCAD, because I didn't have a car, so I didn't have access to getting good pictures and good subject matter. So wherever I go, I take a camera with me and video camera, and I shoot as much as I can. And that's just a way of me building up my portfolio. And that leads me to some of the projects I'm working on now, is that I have a massive amount of backlog. If I can just organize it and then get a story into it, then I'm able to get some interesting projects out of that. So that's how I've been kind of building things up over and over.
So a good quick question real quick is like, so how many hard drives do you have? It's like,
I don't know if you can see that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you got a stack of drives there.
There's actually 2 stacks of.
Oh my gosh.
12 hard drives next to me, and then beneath me is some more I got some Tupperware shelving that I also have some older hard drives in there as well. Yeah, I'm always afraid of backing up work because I've seen students lose their work, and everyone's gone through that. Even just 2 days ago, we had a big power outage, and I had hard drives hooked up, and and one of my hard drives wasn't loading, so I had to do I had to do a scan on this computer or this Mac, and it wouldn't bring it back up again, so I brought it downstairs to my PC, and it did a scan for about an hour, and I actually brought it back up again, so you never know.
Yeah, that's the same thing. I mean, we've got, I don't even know how many, we're definitely we're way over the terabyte limit here at some point. We've got so many terabytes of hard drive space filled with stuff, and then filing cabinets. One thing about both me and Nikki, our background is masters in library information science, and we're preservationists. We were really interested in film preservation and started out in 16 millimeter libraries and doing a lot of archival work. And so like every CMAR, like the Compass Moving Image Art Review since 2009, we still have a copy of basically every submission that's ever been submitted. We have a copy of every show. And then that's just that alone. We've got copies of our own work, other people's work they've given us. work we've done for other people. We have 2 filing cabinets, like 4 drawers tall in our basement with like envelopes full of just DVDs, CDs, tapes, you name it, just like backed up.
Every artist is like that. They got to have a filing system for all their work. That's half the job, is the organization of it. Otherwise, you get overwhelmed and you're going to lose what you have. And that to me is terrifying. That's a really that's a big panicky thing to have that happen.
We've been working on some bigger projects lately, so I'll confess that because we're working on some larger projects, that we've got a few drives hovering with only about 100 gigs left on them, and we're like, all right, we got to start backing some stuff up. That's a big thing about video artists. Like we do the same thing. Everywhere we go, we take a camera and we're documenting everything we see, everywhere we are. We're bringing it home, dumping it to use later somehow, and pieces end up being made out of all of that stuff. So that's really cool.
And I think one of the things that we both have in common is that we're both kind of memory artists in a way, and experience artists, just writing about existence in a way. So like some of the first pieces I submitted to the Columbus Moving Image Art Review are just these time-lapse pieces showing, the passage of months and changes of seasons, and kind of, these little observations about little moments in life, slices of life.
Yeah, let's talk about like Life Lapse really quick. So this is we just really never gotten into this. So Life Lapse is it's a piece you can find. Eric's got a Vimeo channel, YouTube channel that has like over 400. Right, there's over 400 pieces on your YouTube channel, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's tons of out there. You can probably find Life Lapse 2013 #3. And they're these seasonal images, and it's most likely done with a GoPro or something. What I want to know is, are you leaving that camera up there for that season, or do you have it marked off so that you can go and put the camera back and like take it down and put it back on a regular basis?
Well, I would just know exactly where I've been putting it, and then just through clever editing, you just kind of mix it all together. That's basically what I was doing.
No, I mean, that's something you learn from photography, is that I tend to, out of habit, I shoot for the frame because I'm video and film. I don't necessarily shoot for the crop. And some photographers shoot for the crop. And the one thing as a video artist you could remember is like using something like a GoPro, as long as you get it pretty close and pointed kind of in the right direction, you give yourself enough note, you could go back later and actually go for the crop and adjust it and make things go together.
That's where the external hard drives are coming in, because you're making these really high resolution pictures, but then you can basically scale into them. You can do some really interesting editing effects with them.
Yeah.
And I use the GoPro as kind of like an experimental device too. You'll sometimes just set it up, nothing will happen. You'll look at the footage and go, well, darn it, that didn't work. But sometimes you will get something really weird happening in front of that camera. And then when you play it back at like 3,000%, you'll get something that's very magical.
Yeah. So, one thing I wanted to ask you about, you have this like stack of stuff behind you, which looks like mostly audio. Yep. From what I can tell from one wall, but on your website, you have a whole list of movies and stuff. What are some of the other films or other artists that are out there that you've been really getting into lately that's inspired you at this point?
Yeah, again, this answer will be completely different every single week, every single year. Just like last night, I was looking up my favorite films on Vincent van Gogh, and there's like 10 different movies that are all exploring Vincent van Gogh from a slightly different angle. And one of my favorite films is Lust for Life. It's a Vincent Minnelli film from 1956 with Kirk Douglas as Vincent van Gogh. It's the most passionate portrayal of Vincent van Gogh, and it has Anthony Quinn as Paul Gauguin. And then you have Tim Roth as Vincent van Gogh in the Robert Altman film, Vincent and Theo from 1989. So it's like those films are, I think those are good films because they deal with the artist's drive. They deal with the reason why we do the work that we do. especially in the times that we're living in right now, dealing with COVID and the need to work. That's what that Lust for Life film was about, is Vincent's passion for the need to work every single day, and the need. It's like a reason to breathe. If you don't, it's like it's the same old phrase about the shark that stops swimming dies and things like that. That's what Vincent Van Gogh was like. He made like hundreds and hundreds of paintings within like 4 years of his career as an artist. and they were, I mean, that was everything. He gave everything he could just to make all those films. But before we got started, I was talking to you about, I was watching Twin Peaks: The Return, the Showtime show that came out 3 years ago. That's, again, I was really noticing how experimental the pacing was, the editing choices they were, using of dream sequences, and just like really challenging narrative devices to tell this very strange story in David Lynch's head over 18 hours. So it's 18 one-hour episodes of that Twin Peaks show. And I hadn't been into David Lynch for quite a few years. And then, watching that again, it made me bring back some of the David Lynch soundtracks. And I started listening to that while doing work on my computer. So that puts you in a certain trance. And when you're talking about doing this interview, you're asking, like, you should have things behind you that represent part of your art and how you do the work you do. And this is literally my secret, is the music. If I put music on, I can work for hours. And I tell my students that too all the time, is that if you're having trouble motivating yourself, put some music on, put it on earbuds or whatever you need to do. It'll put you in the right frame of mind and you'll get the work done. You'll get a lot of great work all the way through. So that's a really great tip, man, because that's the same way I work. It's the way Nikki works. Like, everything is based on stuff. And I showed you that screen earlier. I had that installation down at the Hilton downtown, and that was a tricky situation because it was a person who was commissioning me, and they had a designer that like really saw the vision. We had worked on the vision, but the owners of the hotel were a little like, they were suspects of the vision, which is, of course, the people with the money paying for it, right? They're always a little suspect of the vision. And they would get back to me and say, you have like 2 days. They're like, hey, I know we took a while to get to you, but now that we did, can you get us something back in like 2 days? We have another meeting. And I would freak out. And one night I just needed, I was freaking out. It wasn't working right. And I put on some music. And I know Motown would get me in the mood. So I put on a bunch of my Motown soundtrack, and it's like 3 or 4 songs in. I was like, it's just not happening. And then this song came on I was just like, there it is. And I worked for 4 hours straight and took it from like feeling like I was nowhere at all to 95% ready to start presenting this thing. Because it just all clicked into place once I got in the groove. The music can really drive it. Like almost everything I do is driven by music in some way as I'm editing it as well. So awesome. And I'm big on comic books as well. And comic book writers often will write to music that's playing around them to get into the right frame of mind to set the tone of what they're trying to establish. So it's in many different creative fields where they use that device, and to me, it shuts everything else out. It's really powerful.
Yeah, so we actually got a really good question from the crowd out there watching. Is so how do you? I know this is a challenge for me too, but how do you balance teaching and art making, and even writing and watching film? Like, how do you balance your time? How do you find a way to do that?
And family.
And family, right? Yeah.
Because that's right now I'm teaching these online courses, but I'm also trying to, my daughter's sometimes in the next room, trying to learn online right now as well. So and then there's there's so many things you're juggling in life. And that's the answer to that one. It changes every single day. You got to work on time management. And then, like, to me, the big reason I teach is so I can have those summers to work. And just having the school expects you to work and to get your work out there. So to me, that's no problem. I mean, I'm happy about that. But then, there's other times where you got to be a father, you got to be a husband, you got to do chores around the house. But then I don't procrastinate either. I tend to work ahead. That's something I was talking to my students about today. I typically will do things right away. And that's something that helps me alleviate pressure, is to just not procrastinate. I never do things at a very close to a deadline. Almost always start early.
Yep, I'm the same way. That's really good advice. Plan ahead. Like, don't wait to the last minute. It can be very frustrating. We were working with somebody previously, and we did a thing, and they're like, oh, I'm going to take a stab at it. And then they waited till like the day it was ready. And they're like, hey, can you help? And I'm like, no, actually, no, we can't. Like, we already put things in this time slot. Like, you have to manage your time. Like, look, today is the day that we're really busy with other things. If we would have known 4 days ago, we could have lent a hand. It's all about that time management, planning it out and having a calendar. And it's just something that's not very creative, though, right? The time management thing is not a really creative thing. So do you have a tool?
Yeah, if you have like a calendar that you can schedule things and give yourself alarms, even for like doing this today, just getting that alarm on my phone, even though I didn't need it, it's helpful to just ease my anxiety. I don't have to deal with trying to remember so many different things. And as you get older, you can't remember as much, and then that makes you feel frustrated. And I was telling my students that too. We have an online course page, so I was showing them how you can access seeing all your deadlines for your assignments, so you can plan things out accordingly, and then you can see a list of them. And by using digital tools and technology, that can help alleviate so much panic of missing deadlines.
Yeah, so we have I have some questions too, but this, like you brought up, you're teaching again, just curious, like I have some of these. Is there like a story or like an experience with one of your students that, like, one of your best teaching experiences, or the value of teaching art, like, that really means something to you?
Oh boy, I do keep a journal, and that's another artistic expression. I sometimes rely on that. And I do keep a log of like crazy student emails that I've gotten that have been like 4 a.m. emails that I've gotten of students just giving me really weird, rambling questions that they're having. But for the most part, I'll just talk about this week, just doing online teaching, and that's all brave new territory, and not sure if it was going to work or not. And so far, it's been working pretty good. And what's been nice about this week is that over the summer, we had to kind of spread out the curriculum a little bit more. And by doing that, it gave us more time to reflect on what the lectures were. And that right now it's dealing with Gestalt theory. So the students were able to talk about found examples of Gestalt principles, dealing with law of prognos and closure and all these kind of ways the brain organizes materials together. So this week, the students were able to talk about these things, and they were seeing things that they were showing examples of things they were interested in, and they were talking about them in ways of discovery. That's what I love, because that's where they're making new discoveries based on information that you're giving them, and something's clicking in their head, and they're pointing things out to me that I hadn't seen in some visuals. Like a student this morning was showing a movie poster for Under the Silver Lake, which is a film that came out a few years ago, kind of a surreal noir film. And the movie poster had these bubbles coming up. It's like this woman's underwater, and you see these bubbles coming up, and there's faces inside the bubbles. And I'm like, I've seen this movie poster several times. I never noticed those faces. And the student noticed those and pointed them out. And I'm like, hey, thank you, Professor Aaron. Thank you.
That's a great experience. And right as you said bubbles, suddenly then, like the piece that I showed the last C mark came up with bubbles on the screen behind me. It's like synchronicity. Sometimes those teaching moments, it's just every once in a while you'll be teaching a subject and a student stumbles onto something, and it just like it opens up something that you yourself as the teacher just weren't aware of. Or maybe it was a question you were trying to answer, right? And you, by talking it out with the student and then showing them their world to you, then suddenly, boom, you have this new perspective. So that's great. Let me see. So previously you were talking about, working and music and, and time management, lower anxiety. So like, what kind of stuff are you working on right now? Like, given the current climate, you're prepping for online teaching, home life as well, with family, what's your work routine look like?
So that got moved upside down starting March with everyone. So I'm definitely an introvert, and I'm in this room a lot during my days when I'm not teaching, just working on this computer that I'm on, that we're doing this right now. And starting in March, you're forced to stay home for this quarantine, and suddenly it was like a writer who was forcing themselves to go into a log cabin to write their novel that they never got to do. So, the past few months has been pretty good because I had all this work that I've put together. So I've been able to really focus on some different types of projects I've been meaning to work on for like 10, 20 years of imagery I've been shooting. And one of them is it's called Faces Found, dealing with, Gestalt principles, Gestalt theory, dealing with how our brain sees faces. And it's called pareidolia, is this phenomenon. And basically, even right now behind you, Matt, over your shoulder, if you combine some of your frames with that speaker there, it creates a little bit of a mouth. So one of the things I take pictures of is whenever I'm walking around and I see a face, I'll take a picture of it. So I've literally got hundreds and hundreds of pictures. So I've been organizing those over, 15 years worth of photography. And then I've been writing a story of dealing with creativity, about opening your imagination to understanding what these images can allow you to kind of grow as an artist. Then, and also this is how this project started coming together, is because I told a student about this, and I was writing this together for a sabbatical application as well. And I told a student about this because I was telling her, would you like to draw your interpretation of what you see in this image? And then she was like, hey, I like this idea. So that kind of got me the pressure to start putting things together in a way that made sense. And then the COVID crisis happened, and then I was home all the time. I was able to start putting this together, and I had one of the programs I help teach in is dealing with the Adobe Creative Cloud with Adobe InDesign. So that's a program for layout for a design. So that was allowing me to use words and images. Again, it's moving image art review, dealing with sequential images as well as text. And that kind of goes with my interest in comic books as well. So I was finding ways to use these images of creating faces in a way that helps inspire people to dream more and to slow down and look around at the world at you and start drawing from these surreal faces you might see around you. It could be at national parks, it could be in your home, it could be around the block. And this was something I did as a game with my daughter. It started with as a game where we would walk around the block and we'd say, hey, look at these cracks over here. Can you find more faces? And then that got me thinking, this could be a children's book. And then I started realizing this could be something for teenagers and it could be something for adults to help inspire creativity, because as we get older, people become less creative. They get their jobs. Once you enter the real world, you sort of tune out. And this was a way of exploring ways to get creative again. And that was how I'm collaborating with some different students to show what they are seeing, how they can draw from these images, and then possibly even have those images come to life as an animation. So that's how I was going to be using it as an interactive tool. And I was thinking of using augmented reality for being able to scan these pictures so that when you look at them, they come to life as someone else's illustration. And then the illustration could come to life as an animation. So I like that it's dealing with discovery and exploration that the viewer can have with that experience. So that's one.
Awesome. I can't wait to see the finished project on that. I mean, you brought up there in the middle about your daughter and games, and so I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your the recent piece. You got some finishing funds from some of the arts councils. Lisa's 8-year-old, some of your documentary work and the piece that you had just produced about her.
Yeah, so my daughter has high-functioning autism. So one of the ways that we are trying to find ways to engage with her was through going to different parks or even playing with toys. So those were two different pieces that I was trying to deal with through research, through listening to Temple Grandin's lectures or reading some of her books and other people's tales and stories and research on the autism spectrum. I was trying to find ways of finding communication outlets that are fun, that people can get into, that allows people to connect. And that's what we do as artists as well, is trying to find those ways to connect with the viewer. I was trying to find a way to connect with my daughter through ways that are fun and ways that you can play. So play was involved with toys that we could have, as well as, and I got looking around my room, I got toys all over the place. But also using parks as another method to, as a way of exploration, as well as sharing experiences together. And that was a way of getting her to open up more and more.
That's again, I can't keep harping on the fact that that's why it's such a kindred spirit thing going on here. Because even these pieces that I make, these pathways pieces, they're also they're based on space, and these spaces that so many people come together in and share in, and the spaces, depending on how you use them and you interact with them, they create, there's like a life there, there's a memory there, there's different ways that you can interact with people. And I think that's something that we're all craving right now. And it's, if anybody who's watching, if you can find a way to check out this piece that he's made, we showed it at one of the Columbus Moving Image Art Reviews. It's a beautiful little piece exploring, it's not only about parks and about play, but it's about specific things too. So there's this love, in giving your love of fantasy and Star Wars and all that stuff to your daughter. And then also talking about the city park system and how valuable the city park system, the Metro Park here in Columbus, is this almost a savior for you, that you found this out, that if you take your daughter to these parks that a lot of places don't have access to, she has this whole world that she gets to explore, and you get to explore with her, and it creates this communal experience and stuff. And it's amazing that you've been able to figure that out and do it along with your art at the same time. So I just really, I applaud you for that.
It relates to what everyone's going through right now with COVID-19 and being indoors all the time. You can still go to the parks. You can still go outside. You can still go hiking. As long as you social distance from other people that might be there, it's still important to get the heck outside and just give your brain some time to breathe. That's what happened to me in the first few weeks of the COVID-19 quarantine. is that I had to go outside on my bike and just bike around every single day because I couldn't stand being home all the time. It was just too much.
Yeah, we take a walk almost every single night. We go on a walk around our neighborhood, and it's kind of our brainstorming session where like that's the time where we unpack what our schedule is, what we've got coming up, what we still got left to do, if there's projects we're working on, what is it that we want to do with them? Can we talk about it or not? And we live kind of up in the North Linden area, and we live in this nice little place where there's a lot of trees and stuff. And it's amazing. We walk in and talking about some project, and we turn, there's like 4 deer, sitting in somebody's backyard, or there's like a rabbit and a squirrel like fighting over who gets to stay in the bush in someone's yard. And it's just really hilarious moments that happen when you're outside now that. Like I don't know. I feel like we take more notice of those now than we would have before, just because we're in our houses so much. But then once we're out and about and we're walking and we're talking and that's our creative time, we start to notice things that we wouldn't have seen before, which I think it's just really important. You got to get out there and move your body and do stuff, and it helps get the juices flowing.
That's what I tell my students. It's like, it's important to work, but it's also important to play and let your brain breathe and have that time to where you're socializing. Don't forget those times to do those other essential tasks. Otherwise, you're just going to burn yourself out.
Yep, that's another really great tip. Yeah. So we're at about 45 minutes in. Do you have any other like last minute thoughts? Any work that you're working on you'd like to share with everybody?
Let's see. I'll bring up the panorama videos at the Columbus Convention Center that I believe the Reese Brothers are helping promote.
While you're pulling that up, I'll explain a little bit. So everybody, there's a screen that's in the Columbus Convention Center. It's one of the largest in North America when it was installed. It's 70 foot long. And I was lucky enough to help, both me and Nikki were lucky enough to help kind of test out, putting experimental art on it and seeing if it would work or whatever. And then the Reese Brothers had put together this call for basically, it's like a film festival to be part of this screen. It's a place for moving image artists to do this. And they put together a panel and they had some cash prizes associated with it. And it's very specific, very thin format video because it's only 7 foot tall by 70 foot wide. So your TV is like 1080 by 1920. Well, this screen is like 4,500 by 320. So it's like really thin. Eric had made work for that. Other people locally had made some work for that. And they did a huge celebration. They're hoping to do that festival again, but with the current state of things, with the convention center, it's tough. I'm sure it will get booted up again as it goes. So go ahead. You have something to share.
Yeah, so this is about just like 3.5 minutes long. What you're seeing here is a kind of visual representation of what one of these pieces would look like in that space. It starts off with the conventions, the Columbus Convention Center's that big, long, super wide video screen. So let's see, I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. So are these part of the one that you had submitted, or are these ones that you're hoping to submit for the next round?
This is something I had put together for the Ohio Arts Council about a month ago. But this, I might have submitted this, but this is kind of like showing how it would look like in that space.
So how are you? I think I've seen some of the imaging before, the colors and stuff. So can you talk a little bit about the process of? So first off, what software are you using? Are you to start off with? Are you drawing these squares and then moving into something else? Can you walk us through it a little bit?
Yeah. So this is an extremely complex process, because this is actually after it's just like overlapping one video file and making a pattern out of it. And this has been inspired by being around one of my colleagues, Alice Friends, who does a lot of pattern work with fashion. So by kind of and I share an office space with her. So just by being around her, I was starting to experiment with like old video pieces I'd been working on. And then I started using that super wide panorama space to kind of create this kind of pattern with that, and then overlapping them over and over again using blending modes. And then I would just keep doing iterative design processes by rendering out different variations of this. And then I was able to keep overlapping it over and over again. So this is just different rectangles and squares on top of each other, and then using blending modes as well as animating them across to start creating this really strange dimensional look. And I would never have gotten to doing this type of work unless the whole panorama video idea came about. Like designing in that super wide space, it opened up a lot of new creative possibilities of what I could do as an experimental artist with video.
So what I'm curious about, so you're starting off, and what it looks like to me is you're starting off with, you've got some video files, because like if you look real close, you can see the thin layers of video file that you've laid out, and then there may be a zoom in or something. So you've created a movement. There, not only does the video have movement, but in post-production, you've then stacked them in a way and created a movement on them. And then you're either exporting it or nesting it in some way so that you can work within that constraint. and then basically you're compiling over and over. So like behind me here, this piece that I had shown at the last CMAR, right? This is very similar. This is documentary footage of a Snake River. It's near Keystone, Colorado. It was during a sunrise, and it's the same process. We're basically painting in the same way, where it's basically we're taking video footage and stacking it vertically, horizontally, making it into streaks or not. It looks like you're like making strips of video and then stacking them in one frame, and then taking that frame and then moving that frame around in different ways. I'm doing a very similar thing where, I'm taking a video and then putting it on itself and on itself and on itself. How many times can you put it on itself and turn it and twist it and without moving away from its original color spectrum? So it at least kind of still looks like the thing that you were working with. And it very much comes out of, you talk about design and sharing the space with your colleague. I mean, I come out of Asian art history with my BA from OSU. I spent a lot of time with like mandalas and the different kind of architecture that exists. Also with Native American clothing, quill work, all that other kind of stuff. It's very much pattern, like fabric, clothing, and architectural geometric patterning that exists. And one thing that I figured out eventually was I was looking at a Tibetan exhibit recently, some old quill work, and they had this one that was It's basically, it was a hearth is what they called it. And it was a fireplace in the middle of the room. So it's like you had a fire pit. And it had these weird channels around it. Did you just lose channels around it? And it was repeated. And so it was a representation of looking down on this space in some way. So it's just really interesting that you're coming out of that same aspect, out of design and out of fabrics.
It's like we're both post-impressionistic painters, like Van Gogh and Gauguin.
Yeah, exactly. We're using a very similar concept. It's the same set of brushes in a way, right? It's the same set of brushes to accomplish this, but we're using different paint and we're using different applications of the brush, right? We're not, but so you can see the similarities, but then you can see where they depart very quickly too, on the choices that you make in the end result once you get so far into it. So that's really cool, man. It's so great talking to you. We're at about almost an hour here, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And it's great seeing you. I put out the Columbus Moving Image Art Review submissions is open right now, so you don't want to miss your chance. I think so. It's open until the 27th. I'm pretty sure you've got something to submit that we haven't seen yet. So you can, the show will be on the 9th of October. So people should feel free to, they can come and check out Eric's work at the next show if he ends up submitting something. And you can check out, movingimageart.wordpress.com. You can also look me up to find out more about it. Also, if you just search Eric Homan and Columbus, I'm pretty sure links to everything come up because I've done that with myself too. So you have Facebook, you have I know you have a website. It's erichoman.com. People can check out more of your work there. They can see stuff about the documentary works you've been doing. And so again, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing with us. Hopefully we'll be able to see each other soon. For everybody out there, Nikki and I have been working on a feature autism film for quite some time, and we're finally at test screening mode. And Eric actually was nice enough to participate in that film. And so we were just talking before the show about we're going to have to eventually do a test screening with him so that he can see the film before we publicly release it. So hopefully we can make that happen.
Sounds great. I look forward to it.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, thanks, everybody. Again, thanks for the Reese Brothers for helping put this show on. Our next episode, I believe I'm going to be back again, and I'm going to be working. We've got kind of I'm OSU. I'm the graduate coordinator I'm the communication coordinator for the graduate school. I used to help run the film studies program at Ohio State University. But I'm interviewing all people from CCAD the next 3 weeks. So, we got Eric here as assistant professor. And then next week, we're going to be working with C.G. Ryan. She's also a long participant in Columbus Moving Image Art Review, but who just got her MFA from CCAD. So we'll be talking to her next Thursday at 4:30. Same bat time, same bat channel. I hope that's not trademarked. All right. See you, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.